Hey, Tom Rabbit! I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit! Okay, so if you say, I do not believe that the facts that you do believe in derive and depend upon God, then consequently your position by default will be that facts are independent of God, whether you admit it or not.
If you say so.
No, you see, that's another sleazy, deceptive response.
It's a bored response.
No, it's a sleazy response because either you accept the analysis or you reject it.
Okay, fine, I reject it then.
Good. What's your rebuttal? What third realm? What third metaphysical realm could there possibly be?
My rebuttal is that that's not a. Yeah.
What was the question that I just asked you?
You asked what is the third metaphysical something?
Yeah, what's the third metaphysical realm?
Okay. The way of framing this, yeah. The way of framing this is problematic because
no, there's nothing wrong with the question. You want to deny the facts that you believe in, that they neither reside in dependence upon God, nor do they reside in independence of God. So what is the metaphysical realm that they exist in then? That is the third option.
Okay, so I accept that this dichotomy that you present, that we're in a God world or in a not God world. I accept that. That dichotomy. But here's the thing. As far as I'm concerned, to my knowledge, as far as I know or are aware of or believe, we could be in one or the other. I have no way to conclusively verify.
You're not addressing the question. What you're doing is you are just simply reforming. Listen to me. No, that's not the issue. The issue is you are simply not addressing the question. You are talking around it. And that's another sleazy response. Whenever somebody prevaricates and their interlocutor says you're not addressing the question, rather than to admit that you're prevaricating, then you pull sleaze maneuver number 2 by saying, oh, you just don't like what you're hearing. Because that's exactly what you did.
But you don't
now, do you believe in that there are actual facts?
Yes.
Okay. Do you positively believe that those facts are encompassed in the metaphysical realm of dependence upon God? Do you positively believe that?
No.
Right. So then that means then that the only realm in which they could exist in as actualities is in independence from God.
Unless, of course, they exist in independence of God, and I'm wrong.
No, sir, listen to me. You refuse to believe that the facts that you do believe in exist in dependence upon God. So then that means that the facts that you do believe in are within the realm of independence of God.
Right. I don't believe that I don't believe that the facts I'm acquainted with exist in reference to God. Insofar that my beliefs don't dictate reality, that doesn't really matter.
Are your facts, are they surrounded by dependence upon God or independence of God?
No idea. It could be either or.
No, you're not understanding. Then you don't have facts.
No, of course I do.
You're not understanding. Listen to me. Then you don't have facts.
It's like saying that you don't have a car if you don't.
No, sir. Listen carefully. Listen carefully. Are facts metaphysically and context specific?
Yes.
Okay. The metaphysical context can only exist in one of two realms, either independence of God or independence of God. You categorically refuse to believe that they are within the metaphysical realm of dependence upon God. That means that as long as you believe in facts, then the only realm that you're left with is in independence of God. If you tell me you believe neither, then you don't have facts at all. You actually believe that facts exist with independence of God until shown otherwise.
I don't know if I transmitted that because talking to somebody.
What was that, Parakeet?
My mistake. Sorry.
Okay. No, you know, I know, and everyone else in this room knows that you believe that facts exist independently of God, but you don't want to admit it verbally on microphone because then you know it'll be incumbent upon you to defend it. So you engage in verbal deception, trying to promote lacktheism in different vernacular. You refuse, you do not believe facts are dependent upon God. So that means that you believe that they're independent of God. Okay?
I mean, this guy's pro-choice. I mean, come on. This guy, it's ridiculous.
No, this is the little verbal game that he has been playing for several years now, because he, as well as other atheists, know they cannot defend the falsity of God. So rather than admit that their belief that there is no God is not rationally derived, they want to transform atheism not as a propositional position that God does not exist, but that merely it's a psychological condition. Hey, Ninclow, have you read the introductory paragraph from the Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy on Atheism? Have you read that?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Good. And do you have a rebuttal to what they said?
Yeah, it's not applicable because that's not what I refer to when I say atheism.
Okay, yeah, you know what? You are a hopelessly deceptive individual. It is applicable because you're not taking a position at all. Okay? Now, when you claim to withhold judgment from God, that's false because you are not withholding judgment of God because you have decided that God is not necessary to be invoked. Is it your position? Is it your position that you withhold judgment as to the existence or non-existence of God?
I would say so.
Okay. Now, but you've decided that it's not necessary to invoke God.
I've decided that it's seemingly not necessary to invoke God.
No, you believe that it's not necessary to invoke God.
I mean, I live my life as if that's the case, but...
Do you believe it is not necessary to invoke God?
Not in everyday life, in any case.
So the answer is yes. You believe it's not necessary to invoke God as the necessary precondition of all facts that are not God. Guess what? That's not withholding judgment from God. You've decided that God's not necessary.
And then we're back to the whole thing about me acknowledging
Have you decided that God is not necessary?
And now we're back on the whole thing about my beliefs not dictating.
Have you decided that God is not necessary? I'm waiting.
I just had to take something.
Have you decided that it is not necessary to invoke and reference God as the necessary precondition of facts?
Everyday life, sure.
Good. Guess what? That constitutes not withholding judgment about God. You have decided, you see, that's another scumbag response. If you say so, you're a scumbag. If I say so, that's not a rebuttal. That's a sleazy response. So now we know you do not withhold judgment from God. You've made the judgment that it is not necessary to invoke God. So if you've decided God's not necessary to be invoked, that is the equivalent of denying the existence of God.
I'm rejecting.
You're not understanding. Again, what you're doing is, like a dog goes back to its vomit, you're trying to transform your judgment about that God is not necessary into a psychological state rather than it is propositional that God is not necessary. You've decided that God is not necessary, right? Right? You see how dishonest they are? Every day I show how deceitful and dishonest atheists are. We have his deceit and dishonesty on full display because they know if they bastardize atheism into a psychological condition, they can just say, "Oh, I have a psychological condition." So then that would mean if atheism is not the proposition that God does not exist, it's simply a psychological condition, then that would mean that theism is simply a psychological condition, and therefore atheism and theism could be simultaneously true as long as at least one person holds to either position. I'll ask you a simple question. Yeah.
Sure.
Theism is true as if at least one person has that psychological condition. And then atheism would be true if at least one person held that psychological condition. So that would mean that atheism and theism were both true.
I mean, we could just ignore the fact that...
Go away, little boy. Get a job, grow up. When you become thinking like an adult, like a young man, instead of reasoning to me like a deceitful adolescent, then come back and talk to us.
Okay, and Hal is pointing out that the usage of the word atheist as a lack of belief predates the Stanford Encyclopedia definition that you give me.
Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the least that you appeal to what are called outliers. Okay,
not outliers.
It doesn't matter. You could appeal to T.H. Huxley in the middle to late 19th century as advancing agnosticism.
Was going to appeal to
how is your position in an atheist substantively distinguishable from agnosticism when agnosticism is defined as neither knowing or believing in God?
Difference is an agnostic would simply say, I don't know. I have no opinion one way or the other.
Did you hear how I just defined agnosticism? Did you just hear how... You see, I want everyone to notice atheists ignore what you say, and then they just resort to going to their little filing cabinet and pull out their selected cliches. I said agnosticism as defined by T.H. Huxley as neither knowing or believing that God does or does not exist. Okay? Did you know that knowing and believing are both within the circle of believing? They're both belief states.
And knowledge is a subset of beliefs. Sure.
Knowledge is a subset of belief. The only difference between knowledge and belief is where one is claiming to have greater justification rather than lesser, because rarely do people believe things without any warrant or justification whatsoever from their perspective. So you're trying to make a sharp distinction between knowledge and belief is not helpful to you. T.H. Huxley coined the term agnosticism. Okay? He said that agnosticism is neither believing or knowing that God does or does not exist. Atheists want to come along and commit the etymological fallacy and say that agnosticism, its meaning is derived from the root word in Greek. This is a fallacy. Okay? Agnosticism is claiming to neither know or to believe in God's existence or non-existence. So how is atheism in any way differentiated from the definition of agnosticism that T.H. Huxley introduced?
Distinction, I believe, would be in the...
okay. If I went, hey, Nin, if I went through the United States and Canada and the Western English-speaking world and I were to poll 100,000 people, okay? If I were to poll 1 million people, if I were to poll 50 million people and ask them the following question saying, what single word do you call somebody who denies the existence of God? What would they say?
Many of them would probably say atheist.
Gee, I wonder why they would say that.
Because that's was how...
No, you atheists are lying scumbags. You don't you want to call yourself atheists, okay, because you know what it means, but that you want to redefine it in a way that's indistinguishable from historical agnosticism so you can insulate yourself from defending what you really believe. But here's the bottom line. We smoked you out, okay? You believe it is not necessary to reference God as the necessary precondition, right?
Okay, here's the issue I have with what you said.
No. Can you answer my question? Do you believe that it is not necessary to invoke and reference God as the necessary ultimate precondition of all facts that are not God?
This guy's a joke.
Shut up.
You believe it's not necessary to reference God, right?
I mean,
it's a simple question.
Sure,
good.
Whatever.
There you go. Game over. Now we have the truth. If you believe that God is not necessary, then you would have to believe that facts are independent of God because God's not necessary.
Right, and now we're back to the home I believe.
Good. And so if you okay, and by the way, people who believe in God believe that God is necessary.
Okay.
If somebody says that I believe in God but that he's not necessary, then they're not talking about God. Okay? So you believe that it is not necessary to reference God as the necessary precondition. That is an indirect and implicit denial of the existence of God, whether or not you realize it. Do people commit informal fallacies without realizing it?
Yeah, that happens.
Okay. Now, so they commit informal fallacies whether or not they realize it. You can deny the existence of God directly and indirectly. You can deny God explicitly or implicitly, whether or not you realize it. As long as you are consciously affirming a proposition, and that proposition necessarily entails the non-necessity of God, you have denied God. Let me repeat that again. Is if you affirm a proposition, any proposition, and that proposition necessarily follows from that or entails the non-necessity of God. So you have stated that you believe that it is not necessary to reference God.
Right.
It follows from that, from modus ponens, if P, therefore Q. If you believe that it's not necessary to reference God, then it follows from that God cannot logically coexist. Because God, by definition, is the necessary precondition. If you believe it's not necessary, right? So when you believe
can my belief be wrong?
Do you believe you can invoke the actuality and intelligibility of facts without the necessity of referencing God?
Evidently so.
Good. You have now denied the existence of God. If P, therefore Q. We're done. Okay. You can. Okay. I have now explained to you for the umpteenth time how you are by implication denying God. Now you can continue to lie through your teeth that you're not denying God, but we all know that you are, because denying God is not simply only within the domain of explicitly denying God. Because all you have to do is affirm a proposition that implicitly or indirectly denies God, and you have denied God. And you have affirmed a proposition which implicitly denies God.
Well, this whole time, Ninclow couldn't give a single rebuttal, so we can only take what he's saying as true, right?
No, because he's craven. He's pathologically craven to defend through verbiage that atheism is simply a psychological condition and doesn't have propositional content as to whether God does or does not exist.
I would like to point out, though, that I find it sort of interesting that you keep reiterating the whole thing about how, these new atheists, they are trying to redefine atheism mean something that it doesn't mean. And then when I point out that, well, usage of the word atheist as a lack of belief actually predates.
Hey,
you're talking about here.
You're not understanding.
Robin,
I addressed that.
Mid-sentence. Yeah, you said that doesn't matter.
You can always listen to me. You can always find outliers.
Not it's not an outlier.
Do you know what an outlier is?
Outlier wouldn't okay. I think I do.
Somebody that is an exception to the rule. It doesn't matter. It is irrelevant that you can point to somebody, let's say in the 20th or 19th century, that wanted to define atheism as just simply having a lack of belief that doesn't constitute the denial. It makes no difference.
It was a designation used about all the early Christians.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, okay? Because what you're doing is when you are invoking this, it's simply a smokescreen to hide from the fact that via modus ponens, the proposition that you do affirm, it follows from that the denial of God. If you say, I believe it's not necessary to reference God, okay, then that means via modus ponens you believe that of the independence of facts from God.
If I say that I believe that facts don't correlate or don't
okay.
Okay. So
is it necessary right now? Is it necessary to reference God as the ultimate eternal precondition of the Eiffel Tower?
I don't think so.
Good. You have now denied the existence of God.
Do my beliefs dictate reality then?
You have denied the existence of God by implication, indirectly.
I have made a statement about my beliefs.
Right. So the Eiffel Tower as a singular, actual, intelligible fact, in your view, does not necessitate invoking God as the eternal precondition. That is your position.
Right, and as a Christian,
good. Now, let's get it clear. I don't even know why I continue doing this. I do it for the audience, not for your sake. Okay, your position is now clear. The Eiffel Tower exists without reference to God.
Didn't say that.
You believe that it is not necessary to reference God when invoking the Eiffel Tower.
Yes, I believe that.
Okay, we're done. We're done. Listen, go away. Either you are severely retarded or you are a completely devious and deceitful young man. Go away. I don't want to talk with you anymore.
Okay, but before I leave,
you see how craven. You see how craven they are.
When
you
he
see
says,
how utter.
When he says he believes that, it means you believe it's true, dude. It means you believe it's actual.
Yeah, we're done.
That's what I believe it means.
We're done. We're done. I'm tired of your lying.
Right, that's why I'm not talking to you right now. So, Da Vinci,
we're done.
I don't really want to talk to you either. So
yeah, he doesn't want to talk to you.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk to you, Ninclow.
You know what you are? You're another atheist liar. This is how despicable you people are. This is how despicable you people are. Okay, you will lie right to our face when you know that we know you're lying to us, and you're shameless about it.
Oh, didn't I accept the narrative? I'm so sorry.
I feel sorry for you. You're a filthy liar.
I feel sorry for you too.
Notice how he characterizes it as a narrative rather than an argument that necessarly follows.
Yeah. Well, this is a problem. Can't even give a rebuttal. So why is he still talking?
This is the ugly lying face of modern atheism. Okay? You're seeing it on full display here. They can't defend what they really believe. So they're like little children, okay? Oh, I don't have a belief in God, but I'm not saying that God doesn't exist. So like the little child who puts their head under the pillow, Daddy, you can't find me. He admitted, go away.
Ian,
he admitted, go away. He admitted that he believes that it's not necessary to reference God, okay? Which means he believes that facts are without the necessity of referencing God. And if you believe facts exist and possess intelligibility without the necessity of referencing God, that is the equivalent of saying facts exist independently of God. And if you believe that facts are independent of God, then from that perspective, God cannot logically coexist, which constitutes the denial of God. Yet they don't want to admit what their position is, so they continue to lie. By the way, did you get that, Tom Rabbit?